Karen Whitmore stood in her pristine driveway at 6:47 a.m., hedge clippers gleaming in the morning sun, methodically trimming her neighbor's overgrown private hedge that dared to extend 3 inches onto her property line. She'd measured it twice with her telescoping ruler, the same one she used for mailbox height violations. "Just doing my civic duty," she muttered, snipping away with surgical precision while her neighbor's bedroom window remained blissfully dark. The second shocking moment came when Marcus Chen emerged from his front door in his bathrobe, coffee mug in hand, to find Karen ankle-deep in hedge clippings on his side of the fence. "What the hell are you doing?" Marcus shouted, nearly dropping his mug. Karen didn't even look up. "Correcting a property line violation. These branches were clearly encroaching on my airspace by..." She consulted her measuring tape, 3¼ inches. The third moment that would define their war occurred when Marcus grabbed the clippers from Karen's hands and threw them into his backyard fish pond with a satisfying splash. "Sue me," he said, slamming his front door. Karen stood there, jaw agape, watching her $89 German-engineered hedge clippers sink to the bottom of the koi pond. In her 15 years as Willowbrook Gardens HOA president, no one, absolutely no one, had ever dared to destroy her property. She pulled out her phone and speed-dialed her attorney. "Dime, it's Karen. I need to discuss assault charges and destruction of property. Also, I'm calling an emergency HOA board meeting for tonight." By 7 p.m., Karen had transformed the Willowbrook Gardens Community Center into a war room. She'd printed aerial photographs of Marcus's property, highlighted every potential violation in fluorescent yellow, and prepared a PowerPoint presentation titled The Chen Problem, a comprehensive analysis. The 3 other board members, elderly Mrs. Patterson, nervous accountant Bob Henley, and social butterfly Jennifer Mills, sat around the folding table looking uncomfortable. "Now," Karen began, clicking to her first slide, "as you can see from these satellite images from Google Earth, the Chen property has been in continuous violation of at least 17 HOA covenants." Jennifer raised her hand tentatively. "Karen, didn't you technically trespass on his property this morning?" Karen's eye twitched. "I was enforcing our community standards, Jennifer. That's what we're elected to do." "But cutting someone's hedges without permission," Bob started. "The hedges were in violation." Karen slammed her hand on the table, 3¼ inches over the property line. "Do you want to live in anarchy?" Mrs. Patterson, who'd been quietly knitting, looked up. "My late husband always said good fences make good neighbors, dear. Maybe we should focus on..." "Your late husband never had to deal with someone who parks their garbage cans 12 hours before collection day," Karen interrupted, "or someone who installed a mailbox that's 43¾ inches high when the regulation clearly states 42 to 44 inches. The room fell silent. Jennifer cleared her throat. "The mailbox is within regulations, Karen. 43¾ inches is between 42 and 44. Karen's face flushed red. "It's not properly centered in the acceptable range." That's not how ranges work," Bob said quietly. "I move to issue formal citations for all 17 violations," Karen announced. "All in favor?" The 3 board members exchanged glances. Mrs. Patterson went back to her knitting. Jennifer studied her manicure. Bob pretended to read the HOA bylaws. "I'll take that as unanimous consent," Karen said, making notes in her official ledger. The next morning, Marcus found 17 violation notices rubber-banded to his front door handle. His hands shook as he read them. Improper hedge maintenance, garbage receptacle premature placement, unauthorized garden gnome placement, failure to maintain regulation mailbox positioning. The last one made him laugh to spite his anger. Excessive koi pond depth, potential mosquito breeding hazard. His wife Sarah emerged from the kitchen. "What's all that?" "Our neighbor has officially lost her mind," Marcus said, handing her the stack. "Look at number 12. Sarah read aloud. "Violation of aesthetic harmony through use of non-compliant doormat color." She looked down at their cheerful yellow doormat, the one their daughter had picked out for Mother's Day. She's citing us for our doormat? Marcus was already on his phone, scrolling through contractor websites. That's it. I'm building a fence. Honey, maybe we should just talk to her. No more talking, Marcus said firmly. She wants to play property line games. Fine. I'm putting up an 8-foot privacy fence. Completely legal according to city ordinances. Sarah winced. 8 feet? That's going to completely block her view of the street. Marcus smiled grimly. Exactly. Karen was enjoying her morning coffee and surveillance routine from her kitchen window when the fence company truck pulled up. 3 men in hard hats began unloading wooden posts and panels from the bed. She marched outside in her bathrobe and fuzzy slippers. Excuse me, you can't put up a fence there. The crew foreman, a weathered man named Chuck, consulted his clipboard. Ma'am, we pulled all the proper permits. Properly surveys been done. Everything's legal. But it's going to be enormous. 8 feet, Chuck confirmed. Customer wants privacy. Karen's mind raced through HOA regulations. Fences were covered in Section 4.7 of the covenants. She'd written that section herself. The maximum height for rear yard fencing was 8 feet. The maximum for side yard fencing was 6 feet. But Marcus's proposed fence would run along the back of his property, technically making it rear yard fencing. There has to be something, she muttered, pulling out her phone to call Diane again. Karen, you can't stop someone from building a legal fence on their own property, her attorney said with barely concealed exasperation. But the aesthetic impact on the neighborhood is not legally actionable. My advice, let it go. Karen hung up and watched the workers dig post holes along the property line. Each shovelful of dirt felt like a personal attack. By evening, the skeleton of Marcus's fortress wall was taking shape. Karen stood at her living room window, measuring tape in hand, trying to calculate exactly how much of her street view would be blocked. Her husband Richard found her there an hour later, still measuring and muttering. Karen, you need to let this go, he said gently. It's just a fence. It's not just a fence, Richard. It's a deliberate act of aggression designed to undermine my authority as HOA president. Richard sank into his recliner. Or maybe it's a man who wants privacy in his backyard after his neighbor cut his hedges at dawn. Karen whirled around. Whose side are you on? I'm on the side of not having our neighbors hate us, Richard said. Mrs. Patterson told me at the grocery store that you're making the whole board uncomfortable with this Chen obsession. Mrs. Patterson doesn't understand the importance of maintaining property values through consistent covenant enforcement. Karen, Richard's voice was firmer now. Listen to yourself. You're talking about your neighbors like they're criminals. But Karen was already back at the window, watching Marcus string lights along his new fence posts. Party lights. Multicolored, cheerful party lights that would certainly violate the HOA's subdued lighting requirements. She reached for her citation book. The fence was completed 3 days later, and it was magnificent in its spite. 8 feet of solid cedar privacy fencing that blocked Karen's view of not just Marcus's backyard, but also her sightline to the street corner where she used to monitor traffic violations and unleash dogs. Even worse, Marcus had planted fast-growing bamboo along his side of the fence. Bamboo, Karen said to herself, researching invasive species ordinances on her laptop. Surely bamboo counts as an invasive species. Her phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer Mills. Emergency board meeting tonight. We need to talk. Karen's stomach dropped. Emergency meetings were never good news for the person who didn't call them. The community center felt different that evening. Mrs. Patterson, Bob, and Jennifer sat on one side of the table with their arms crossed. Karen sat alone on the other side, her stack of Marcus Chen violation notices looking suddenly small and petty. We've been talking, Jennifer began, and we think you need to step back from this situation with the Chens. Step back? Karen's voice rose an octave. They're in violation of multiple covenants. The doormat citation, Karen? Mrs. Patterson's voice was gentler but firm. You cited them for a yellow doormat. Yellow is a perfectly lovely color. It disrupts the aesthetic cohesion of. There's no such thing as aesthetic cohesion in our covenants, Bob interrupted, holding up his copy of the HOA rules. I've read them cover to cover. Twice. Karen felt the ground shifting beneath her feet. I've been protecting our property values for 15 years. Every single one of you has benefited from my vigilance. Your vigilance is turning into harassment, Jennifer said quietly. The Chens aren't the problem here, Karen, you are. The words hit like a physical blow. Karen stared at the three faces across from her, people she'd worked with for years, people she'd considered allies in the fight for neighborhood standards. Are you removing me as president? She asked. The board members exchanged glances. Mrs. Patterson spoke first. We're asking you to take a leave of absence. Think about what you really want for this community. Karen gathered her papers with shaking hands. At the door, she turned back. When property values start dropping because people are parking RVs in their driveways and painting their houses purple, don't come crying to me. But deep down, as she walked to her car under the streetlights, Karen felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Doubt. What if they were right? What if she had gone too far? The thought terrified her more than any property violation ever could. Karen spent 3 sleepless nights staring at Marcus's fortress wall from her bedroom window. The bamboo was already sprouting, and she could hear the Chens laughing in their backyard, actually laughing, as if they were enjoying their private sanctuary. On Thursday morning, she made a decision that would change everything. She was going to apologize. Karen had never apologized for HOA enforcement before. The very concept felt foreign, like trying to write with her non-dominant hand. But Richard was right. She was losing perspective, maybe losing herself. She put on her best cardigan, the one she wore to church, and walked across the street to Marcus's front door. The yellow doormat seemed to glow in the morning light, mocking her previous citations. She rang the doorbell. Sarah Chen answered, clearly surprised to see her. Oh, hello, Karen. I was wondering if I could speak with Marcus, Karen said, her rehearsed apology speech suddenly feeling inadequate. He's at work. Can I help you with something? Karen took a deep breath. I wanted to apologize for the hedge trimming and the citations. I think I may have gotten a bit overzealous. Sarah's eyebrows rose. A bit? Okay. Very overzealous. Karen twisted her hands. I care about this neighborhood. Maybe too much. For a moment, Sarah's expression softened. Would you like to come in for coffee? Marcus will be home for lunch in a couple hours. Sitting in the Chen's kitchen, Karen felt like an alien visitor studying human customs. The house was warm and lived in, with children's artwork on the refrigerator and actual books scattered on the coffee table instead of perfectly arranged decorative objects. How long have you been HOA president? Sarah asked, pouring coffee from a cheerful red pot. 15 years, Karen said. I ran unopposed the last 3 elections. That's a long time to be making decisions about other people's properties. Karen bristled instinctively, then caught herself. I suppose it is. I moved here when the neighborhood was new. I watched every house get built, every family move in. I wanted to protect what we were creating. Sarah sat down across from her. But what were you creating? A community where neighbors help each other, or a place where everyone's afraid of getting cited for the wrong doormat color? The question hung in the air. Karen stared into her coffee cup, seeing her reflection in the dark surface. I don't know anymore, she admitted. When Marcus came home for lunch, he found Karen and Sarah deep in conversation about neighborhood history. He stood in the doorway, clearly torn between suspicion and curiosity. She came to apologize, Sarah explained. Marcus sat down slowly, studying Karen's face. Okay, I'm listening. Karen had rehearsed this moment, but facing Marcus directly, seeing the genuine hurt in his eyes, her prepared speech evaporated. I'm sorry, she said simply. I was wrong. About the hedges, about the citations, about pretty much everything. Marcus waited. I thought I was protecting the neighborhood, Karen continued. But I think I was really protecting myself. From change, from losing control. Marcus's expression softened slightly. It wasn't really about privacy. It was about sending a message that you couldn't control every aspect of my property. Message received, Karen said with a rueful smile. Sarah refilled their coffee cups. So what happens now? Karen considered the question. Well, the board has asked me to take a leave of absence, which is probably for the best. I need to figure out who I am when I'm not constantly monitoring everyone else's mailbox heights. Marcus laughed to spite himself. You really did measure our mailbox, didn't you? 3 times, Karen admitted, with a level. Over the following weeks, Karen found herself in a strange new reality. Without her HOA duties consuming her days, she had time to actually look at her neighborhood instead of constantly surveying it for violations. She noticed things she'd missed during her 15-year enforcement patrol. Mrs. Patterson's beautiful rose garden, the way the Johnson kids had created an elaborate chalk art gallery on their driveway, how the various architectural styles actually complemented each other rather than competed. She also noticed that the neighborhood hadn't descended into chaos without her constant vigilance. Garbage cans were still mostly returned to their proper storage locations. Most lawns remained reasonably well maintained. The sky hadn't fallen. On a Saturday afternoon, she was weeding her own garden when she heard voices from the Chen backyard. Through a gap in the bamboo screening, she glimpsed Marcus teaching his daughter to build a treehouse in their oak tree. The structure was slightly crooked and definitely not up to any building code, but the joy in the little girl's voice as she hammered nails into boards made Karen smile. Her phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer. Board meeting Tuesday night. We'd like you to come. The community center felt different when Karen wasn't sitting at the head of the table. Mrs. Patterson had assumed the interim presidency, and her gentle leadership style had transformed the atmosphere entirely. We wanted to talk about your future with the HOA. Mrs. Patterson began kindly. We value your institutional knowledge and your passion for the community. But not my enforcement methods, Karen said wryly. Well, Bob said diplomatically, perhaps we could channel that passion differently. Jennifer slid a folder across the table. We've been thinking about creating a community liaison position, someone to help new residents understand the covenants, mediate neighbor disputes before they escalate, maybe organize social events. Karen opened the folder and read the job description. It was everything she'd been doing, but reimagined with empathy instead of enforcement at its core. You want me to be a neighbor helper instead of a neighborhood cop, she said. Exactly. Mrs. Patterson smiled. What do you think? Karen thought about Marcus's crooked treehouse, about Sarah's kindness over coffee, about her own reflection in that dark cup. I think I'd like to try being helpful instead of right for a change. 3 months later, Karen knocked on the Chen's door again. This time, she carried a plate of homemade cookies and a folder full of information for the new family moving in next door. Marcus answered, and his surprised smile was genuine. Karen, how's the new job going? Turns out I'm actually good at helping people solve problems when I'm not the one creating them, she said. I wanted to ask a favor though. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Shoot. The Petersons are moving in next door tomorrow. Young family with twins. I'm putting together a welcome packet, and I wondered if you'd be willing to write a little note about what it's like living in the neighborhood. Marcus grinned. Should I mention the hedge trimming wake-up calls? Only if you also mention how the former HOA president learned to mind her own business, Karen replied. Deal. Marcus paused. You know, we're having a backyard barbecue next weekend. Nothing fancy, just neighbors hanging out. You and Richard are welcome to come. Karen felt an unexpected warmth in her chest. I'd like that. Fair warning though, I might ask if your treehouse is up to code. And I might tell you exactly where you can file that citation, Marcus laughed. As Karen walked back across the street, she could hear hammering from the Chen backyard. Marcus and his daughter were adding another level to their gloriously imperfect treehouse. She made a mental note to bring extra cookies to the barbecue. But that night, as Karen was updating her files on neighborhood residents, now filled with birthdays and pet names instead of violation counts, she received an email that made her stomach drop. The message was from a law firm representing Willowbrook Gardens' parent management company, RE, pending property acquisition and development rights.